In America, the leading cause of death for both Hispanic and white males ages 1 to 44 years old is unintentional injuries, otherwise known as accidents. For black males ages 1 to 18, the leading cause of death is murder. For black males ages 19 to 44, the leading cause of death is murder. The American way. The systematic use of violence and guns to secure the American dream and the disproportionate cost to black people.
From coast to coast, from north to south, communities are trying to make sense of escalating gun violence and rising murder counts. With a national average increase of 20% over last year, there are several cities across America recording increases of 50% and higher. Many people are searching for answers. In this special, we will look at the history, effect, and the cause of gun violence and murder in America, focusing on the devastating impact on black people. With our panel of experts and our stakeholder audience, we will provide insight that leads to solutions for this American tragedy of gun violence. You will hear information, ideas, and perspectives not presented, discussed, or considered by mainstream media or corrupt and compromised politicians. So, let's meet our panelists. Pastor Lillian Williams is a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, where she served as a nurse practitioner. Today, she serves as Pastor Lillian of Cathedral of Amazing Grace International Ministries located in Columbus, Georgia. Reginald Griffin Sr. is a native of Columbus, Georgia. He is a graduate of Florida A&M University with a biology and educational leadership degree. Mr. Griffin is also a graduate of Florida State University, earning a specialist degree in educational leadership. Currently, he is a doctoral candidate at Valdosta State University in educational leadership. Mr. Griffin has 26 years of experience in education in both Florida and Georgia. He has been a principal for 18 years and began his career as a 31-year-old principal in Tallahassee, Florida. Currently, he serves as the principal of the Marshall Success Center. Dr. Sandra Anderson. Dr. Sandra Anderson is a chaplain serving those incarcerated with the Department of Corrections. Dr. Anderson has worked in prison ministry for 20 years and has a background pastoring churches here in Columbus. Dr. Anderson also has a nonprofit organization called Second Chance that ministers to females returning citizens after their return to the community. Dr. T. Owens Moore. Dr. Owens Moore, PhD, is trained as a physiologist psychologist. He is a graduate of Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, and he has an MS and a PhD from Howard University. For more than 20 years, he has served as a college professor, a biomedical researcher, and an African-centered scholar activist. He is a distinguished educator who appreciates interdisciplinary studies. He is the chairperson of the Department of Psychology at Clark Atlanta University. His specialty courses are both in the field of neuroscience and African-centered psychology. Our moderator is a Columbus native, a graduate of Carver High School and a graduate of Columbus State University with a degree in biology. He is the owner of Health Matters Incorporated and serves as the CEO of the Zeph Baker Foundation. He is a community servant, an avid community volunteer, and supporter, and an active philanthropist. Please welcome our moderator for this evening, Mr. Zeph Baker.
Thank you to our panelists and stakeholders, and thank you to our television audience. We have a full plate. We will begin with our panelists. As Joanne mentioned, gun violence is up across America. To what do you attribute this rise in crime, and particularly gun violence, in our communities across America? And let's begin with Dr. Moore. Why is the gun violence up in America?
Well, certainly we can't bypass the pandemic that we're experiencing. People have been in the house, they've been away from one another for so long, and now you're just putting people back into the environment and society. And we see all over the place, people are being very anxious and very nervous, and you see people not interacting properly. So the pandemic, by isolating us, it has made us more anxious. Now as we come out into the real world, we feel threatened. We're dealing with a power dynamic in the society where, again, if you don't have money, you don't have material, therefore you can't survive. So the pandemic has disrupted many people's lives. We don't even talk about the dynamic of what was going on before the pandemic and people's lives being disrupted.
Right.
So we have the issue of violence. The word, if I look at the word violence, I just try to create in my mind, violence is any aggressive act to deter my livelihood. So what's going on now with this, the Republicans trying to stop your voting? To me, that's violence.
That's violence, right.
So when we start reconstructing what the word violence really means, we understand that we as a people in a situation where we could have power to control our own reality, but we have other people defining our reality. So now with the pandemic, where you're now trying to survive and trying to be in a situation where you have to have a livelihood and have economics and have money, and now you don't have a livelihood, you don't have economics, who becomes the most threat to you? The person closest to you. So outside of our communities, you also then have the violence. It's not just us killing one another, you have other communities killing one another, because violence relates to, again, power, a power dynamic. So we're living in a society right now where power is what defines reality. And if you don't have any power, guess what? The only way you can try to have it is with a what? Gun.
Right, violence, understand. Dr. Anderson, can you share your thoughts?
I think from my background and experience, I think a lot of it has to do with how a person is framed, their background and experience. I grew up in Gary, Indiana, and as long as I can remember, my father had a gun in the drawer. So I thought as an adult, I needed a gun in the drawer. And I thought the gun was hidden. My dad thought his gun was hidden, but I knew the gun was there. And the experience that I had with my oldest son, when he was about 9 years old, he was having some problems of bullying at school. And he was in the bathroom, and I came in and, what's the problem? He said, Robert is picking on me, and I have to get the gun from under your mattress and shoot him. And so something that I thought was just a regular part of the furniture, grew up with a gun in the house, could have exploded into gun violence for my son. And I think that when you grow up and you see guns and you handle guns and it becomes part of your normal, I think that if that person, depending on their situation and circumstance, at 10 years old, my son knew he needed to get a gun and shoot Robert. This can happen to any child, any young person. When you are framed that way in your youth, you see guns, you know they're there, they're normal.
Yes, yes, understood. Dr. Griffin.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
I had somewhat of a similar experience, but I chose to go another route with my son. One day he said he wanted to be in the military or police. And I asked him why. And so the first thing that came to mind is my guns. I hunt, I go shoot. And I think, we live in a violent society, so I have to be prepared at all times for that violence. So what I did is change the narrative. I went and showed him how to shoot, trained him on how to shoot. So my son was a 9-year-old he can shoot an AR-15. He has his own weapons. We go hunt. And I think that's something that we need to consider in our communities, registering, getting guns, as well as training our kids, because the minute he saw something get shot in the woods, that's not a toy anymore, okay? It's not an object to play with anymore. And I think sometimes the best experience is to see something on hand and what that gun and what it can do. So I think that's what we're lacking. And I think many times kids get in trouble and adults get in trouble because we have more guns than nations have guns outside of the military. That's one reason we'll never be invaded by any other nation because if you destroy all the military, you got to deal with, you know, folks who look like me and other people. And so the issue is, I think one reason to mitigate gun violence in America, we have to train our youth to use those weapons properly.
Mm-hmm. And Pastor Dr. Lillian, your thoughts?
Thank you for having me. I think we have changed our society. We have indoctrinated into our young people that it's okay to shoot people. First of all, the first thing, have you looked at some of the games that they play on their Xboxes and on their PlayStations? Mm-hmm. They have these games that they play and everybody's shooting everybody. So the kids think to shoot somebody, well, he's just a person who's gone. It's nothing. They feel nothing about this. They have no qualms about shooting someone because it's like playing a game. And then we have the laws that have passed that everybody can carry a gun. You know, so what's the penalty for this? Mm-hmm. So the children have been, I guess, indoctrinated that it's okay to have a weapon like this. Mm-hmm. And this is what's happened in our society. We've made this legal. So everybody out there has a gun. Everybody can shoot someone. And the children don't know what's right and what's wrong. This used to be taught at home. It used to be taught in school. It used to be taught in church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Understood. It is our objective to present information and content that you will not see on the news, read in the newspaper, or hear from compromised politicians. With that said, to our panelists, can you share your thoughts on the fact that from the White House to local governments, elected officials are claiming to be shocked by the violence we are experiencing? And let me put this out there. For many of us, we find this hard to accept, given that America is the most violent country on the planet. Let me say that. And let us not forget that America was literally built stealing, raping, kidnapping, murdering, and transporting. And isn't that what we're witnessing? Actually, we're witnessing the American way of how this country was built. Let me read some statistics. Let's go a step further. In 2019, the breakdown of murder in America by race is as follows. Whites, 5,787. Blacks, 7,984. Hispanics, 2,193. So when looking at the raw number, the majority of murders in America occur to Black people. And does this in any way affect your attitude to how serious the government is about addressing gun violence?
I'd like to comment because earlier said about the kids and their character. People have been conditioned.
Yes.
So our kids are being conditioned to be violent,
yes.
Conditioned to kill, as you said, the video games and seeing that. I don't need to go into the history because you just said what the history of the United States is. You just said the statistics in terms of what the numbers are, so we know that is real. Mm-hmm. So the issue is how do we break that monopoly on our minds? And that's why I'm saying the most powerful tool in the hand of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So for us as African people living in society, we have others dictating on how we should be operating, how we should be maneuvering through the society. So in terms of the issue of the history, we've been in, the whole colonialism and slavery was like 500 years. Do you know how long Reconstruction was in the United States? 12 years. You know how long since 1954, the Brown versus Board education? That's 54 to 2001 right now, 67 years. Those are experiments that have not worked. They could have worked, but the system is into violence to make sure it doesn't work. We just had the anniversary, was it Tulsa, Oklahoma? Greenwood, where people had their own community, had the barbers shops, had their banks, had the business, had everything to survive. Who felt inferior from that? Melanin recessive people. People who don't have your appearance. People who are scared of what? Scared of you? Scared of what? So now we have to get down to the dynamic of what you're scared of. The most dominant threat to a ruling patriarchal society is another male. So we talk about all this violence. Yeah, there's sisters in prisons too. There's sisters are struggling too, but a male is someone that can attack that other male. And so now you target that. Now you have systems. the prison industrial complex, you got the medical pharmaceutical industrial complex. All those systems are in place, and here we are now trying to figure it out. You don't understand the system, you can't break the system.
Dr. Griffin, can you speak on that, because you see a lot of, you're at the alternative school.
Correct.
So do you see a disproportionate number of African American children who are coming through your doors because of discipline in the regular classrooms than other ethnic groups?
Absolutely. Over the last 7 years, 81% of the students that come to the alternative school here in Columbus are African American. 61% are African American males. When they get over there, honestly, 98% of them do not get in trouble. The number one issue that we deal with is grief counseling. Okay. The second counseling session that is huge for us is trauma, and some of that trauma is centered around schools as well. So we have kids, we have to normalize mental health supports in our community. Grief, for example, we have kids who've lost students. I've offered, anytime somebody is murdered, especially the youth, we'll hook you up with some free grief counseling at the school. I don't care who you are. And so, but the point is that we have a generation of kids that don't know how to deal because we never knew how to deal with it. I lost my father at an early age. I didn't grieve until 10 years later. And the grief came out more because I had an older brother that couldn't take it. I had a younger brother that couldn't take it, and I had my mother there seeing my father pass. So the point is that if I couldn't deal with it as a 34-year-old man, when that happened, how can the youth deal with it? And what do we teach them? And so those are some of the problems that are major in our community and all communities. So when that kid gets up and throws a desk that grazed the teacher, it wasn't for that kid he was throwing at, and it definitely wasn't for that teacher. It was the issue that he or she was going through at that time. So, we have to treat these kids, a lot of times, when I come and talk with people, I can't blame these kids, man, because number one, we're the ones raising them. The adults don't have, the kids don't have guns. The kids are not music producers. The kids are not producing the things, the liquor and all these kind of things right here. So we have to take care of our youth ourselves and let these kids be kids. I think that's what we forget all the times too. 18 years old don't mean you're grown. Yes. My daughter just turned 21. She's graduated from UGA. She's getting her master's at Florida right now. Just because you was 20 yesterday, just because you're 21 today means nothing to me. It's just a gateway drug. Now, apparently society telling you can go here, society telling you can go there. You know what I'm saying? And it's almost you're giving wealth away because they think the world is opened up to you because of an age. No bar mitzvahs, no rites of passage. Right. You just turn a certain age. But again, I think the major issue, what I see is a lot of grief therapy. And kids just need healing, someone to talk to on a clinical basis, not just, hey man, let me sit down. So we have New Horizons that can work with parents for free, do whole house counseling, extend the counseling efforts outside when the kids return to their home schools. So we're trying to change the narrative and support the kids and the families because our parents have had trauma.
You raised some great points. And there's two things I want you to expound on, and any of our panelists, also stakeholders. But you mentioned over 80% of the children who come through your doors, and this is an alternative disciplinary school where kids are brought outside of the regular classroom setting. How does that impact their psyche, their mental, how does it impact them to be taken out of the classroom? And Dr. Moore, I know you're a neuroscientist. You can deal also with the psyche in that. How does it impact a child to be taken out of the regular classroom and placed almost, I wouldn't say in isolation because they have company there?
Well, we try to eliminate a lot of those issues. I don't care what you did at your home school because I'm not emotionally attached to that. You didn't do that here. And so we have to be adults in the room so when they come, you know, that doesn't matter, because see, you've been ostracized, and we're not trying to break backs all the way. And so I think our goal is to actually support the youth and actually build some credibility back into the school district when the parents go back and when the kids go back. We built a culture, now kids get in trouble to come to AIM. We built a culture now that kids will get in trouble where they won't have to go back. So right now at the alternative school, we can't tell kids when they're leaving, because we know what they're going to do next. So we literally get a call, hey man, I need to talk to you, I appreciate you, the parent will be in my office, and we have a transition plan to get that child back. So I think you have to build a culture that's going to support the kids, because again, I'm going to go back to it, if you're grieving and you have some mental health issues, it doesn't matter, you know, at certain point, I've got great teachers. Okay, that's my number one discipline factor. I have tremendous educators, okay? So these kids are getting a quality education. But even with that, I still need to fix the support the youth mentally, you know, and emotionally. And so I think that's how we're changing the narrative of alternative programming in Columbus.
Absolutely. Dr. Moore, is there a possibility that these children who are in the school system, are they suffering from PTSD, from trauma that they've had in their lives or have in their lives?
Yeah, we can say that for a few, not all, but the issue really is emotional intelligence. I mean, we just talked about the issue of their emotions, and we don't address that. We asked from the very beginning, why is this pandemic occurring? Because people don't have emotional intelligence. Someone's going to cut you off, now you're going to go shoot them, and then that means now your whole life is what? Ruined because you shot somebody because they cut you off? That's not emotional intelligence. So those are grown-ups that are doing many of those things. So the children in the schools, so they're coming in, and I was only smiling when you said about the kids are doing things to get there. It's almost like we've been made to be dumb. And guess what? Now we accept it. We've heard the stories before about, oh, you talk white. You talk like why do you talk like that? You trying to be white? So what are you saying? Flip that around. So you're now talking bad, so you're trying to be bad and black? So this whole cultural thing and the emotional part of it, it really goes deep. And that's why I'm saying when we talk about integration, we talked about segregation, that wasn't even the argument. It was liberation versus control. Now we have our kids going to people who don't like them anyway to teach them. So how do you expect them to come out of this situation properly? So when you say PTSD, yeah, it could be coming from the home. Some things have happened, but then you go to the school system, it's even worse. So yeah, PTSD has an impact, but the issue is, how do you now have kids adjust? I mean, we've seen those stories of the sisters and the kids that were going to school during the 50s and 60s, going to the integrated schools and going there by themselves. Where were the parents at? Just the fact that, you know, you're exposing them to this educational system that has no interest in them being educated right. So we've been thrown in the hole, but it's up for us to get out the hole. And we don't think like that. We just waiting for someone else to solve the problem for us.
Dr. Anderson, what are your thoughts? You talk to, because you work with these parents, you work with the mothers. What are your thoughts? The
trajectory of getting our youth to prison starts in elementary school. They are framed, trained. When you don't act right, we take you out of a regular classroom setting, we take you to jail. Alternative school in the mind of a child is jail. And so they go over there, and I'm a prison chaplain, so I make jail really, really fun. So they are trained to be inmates in kindergarten. You know, bad behavior will get you put over here. We're training our young people to be inmates at a very early age. Well, your mom been to prison, your dad been to prison, you on the trajectory to go to prison yourself. And so it's like a generational curse. And we are thinking that it's a good thing. You can't be managed inside of the classroom. Well, most white teachers cannot manage my black son. It's a dynamic that's diametrically opposed. They don't understand. And so my son becomes a problem because he's African American, doing some cultural things in the classroom, and you start to train them very, very early for prison. When they get to prison, they've been to alternative school. You can hear the story of what took them there.
Well, how do we define bad in schools, in the classroom, with a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old? How do we define bad? Because is that cultural as far as how discipline is given out to each child? Because when you see, just say if I'm a white female and I see a white male just being a boy, what we call being a boy, then I can understand that. But a black male child, do they act out in just being a boy in a different way? So because there's a disconnect in the understanding, how do we define bad, especially when we start to giving out discipline?
There's no definition for that at times. It's very ambiguous. You know what I'm saying? And so because how you have a classroom runs that class may be different than how another teacher does. But the issue is clear. We've developed a population of educators who are predominantly white, female, middle class, who've had no experience on the foundational, the cultural, and just the generalities of any African American people. Okay, because number one, let me just clarify a thing. We're not a monolith. Okay, I'm an African American Muslim male, so I bring different things to the table than somebody else may bring. Okay, my culture is different because of my religion and where I go and who I hang with. We're not a monolith. We're not a monolithic group of people. We have variances and difference, but we go to the norm, which is we're gonna put everybody in the box and we're gonna operate out of that system. Why? Because it's very easy. So you have to teach your teachers what intersectionality is. You have to teach your teachers that just because why are you treating and I'm gonna tell you it's even different. A darker skinned African American child is gonna catch it more than a lighter skin. And that could come from us. So black and white teachers bring conscious and unconscious biases to the table every single day. You know, we bring class issues. I got mine, you got to get yours. These are things I'm sure everybody has heard in today. You know, and so we've got to do greater. You know, nobody in here just went and got no car. You did some homework on that car. You found out how much mileage. We don't do that in education. And so we have to do that specifically it's here. It's in Tallahassee, Florida. It's in New York City. It's everywhere. Our stats are mirrors to everywhere. And so, but it's easy just to sit back because, look, they doing it over there too. So we've got to have some greater understanding of ourselves, and especially in terms of training for our staff, including administrators.
Now I'm going to ask, because you may know, I don't, but who was the education system that is now in place? Was it created for all children, Dr. Moore, or was it created for one segment? Or I'll just say it, was it created for white children?
I only got one bomb to drop. I bought bullets here, I bought grenades here, I bought weapons, I bought artillery, books, right?
Yes.
We are the only people on the planet, look at the globe, the only people on the planet that send our kids to our former oppressors to teach them.
Amen.
That's all I got to say. It's a problem.
No, I want you to expound on that.
I will.
Because there's like, we're going to get to the stakeholders, but tell me, who was the education system that our children go through from K through 12 grammar? Who was it designed for?
It was designed to make people cogs in a wheel to just push buttons, just to put screws on caps. We're in Columbus, which is an industrial town. Railroads came through here. You had businesses here. You're training people. You don't have to go to school. Just go ahead to the factory, get the job. You don't have to go to school. Just go ahead and get that skill and just do that task. And some of us were plumbers, some of us were carpenters, some of us had those tasks. But now, since the economy's changed, guess what? You might need an education, but now you're not prepared for the education. So the education was set up for people just to be parts of the wheel, but not to control the wheel. So the people, the Carnegies, the Ford Foundation, all those people, they constructed the society for people to not really be educated. There's a book called Dumbing Down of America. And I mean, there's many people that have discussed this, but we, again, as the people who send our kids to our former oppressors, there's no possible way you're gonna be educated properly. They're not gonna teach you how to take their power away from them. they're going to keep you coming back to jail. They're going to keep you on them drugs. And as soon as they're in jail or they're on drugs, they change the landscape. Oh, well, it's no longer a drug crisis. It's a opioid problem. It's no longer a problem for mental health people to go to jail. Let's create some programs to help them out. So I'm just saying, we, as you said, the narrative. If we don't change the narrative, it's not going to be corrected.
It's definitely for socialization. The principal has to make it an educational place. So I've been a principal. I've been, I was an assistant principal at one of the biggest schools in North Florida. We had every advanced placement. That's the highest class you can take in 5 years. So I couldn't turn down this job because I wanted to be a principal. I got the worst. On how we undereducate or miseducate people that look like me.
Right. And let me say this by my own experience. When the magnets first came to Columbus, Georgia, well, the first magnet school, you know what it was? It was Carver High School. We had the math and science magnet. However, that was supposed to be where anybody who was interested in that path was supposed to be able to apply to the magnet and come to Carver. We had our own section within the school. However, because it was a predominantly black school, there was a lot of people in other parts of Columbus who did not want to come or send their kids. Yep. So we did not get all the magnet money.
Correct.
This was one of the problems with Dr. Coleman. I don't know if you remember Dr. Coleman when he was here, and they brought him down from Howard, and he figured out, hey, I'm not getting all the money for my kids. You're sending some of this money to Columbus High School and Hardaway for those kids to have the same type of magnet program without the actual tag of magnet and not have to come to Carver. So I do understand we are plagued here in Columbus, Georgia, simply because a lot of the resources are not coming to the schools that are designated. I know that was true at one time. Yeah. Is that still true? We're fighting for the resources for our kids in our schools.
You have to go to war with the resources, and you've got to understand how to weaponize what you get. And a lot of times our principals don't know how to do that. And one problem with Columbus is a lot of people have never been nowhere. So you went to school here, you went to Columbus High, you went to Columbus State, you intern, and so you've gone through the system, but you don't have networks outside, nor have you seen anything. So when people come from outside, what's normal is abnormal to somebody like me.
Right.
And but the principals have to fight and weaponize and really go hard in the paint for us, because it doesn't take. So the second year I got to Bellevue Middle School, the first year I created a magnet. I've got to compete. Okay, so now we got honors class. I looked at the data. 45% of those kids had excelled. The folks who didn't represent the community was running the show, and they didn't look at data, put everybody in the box. Now they couldn't teach the kids because these are magnet level kids. Come up here to Spencer. The second year we had 15 AP classes, 280 kids in AP classes, right, from one to this. So you got to go out there and desire and want. Now, did I get were some people hating? Man, I thought about turning around and going back down there just to get the AP classes. Right. But I knew at the end of the day, if I'm doing this down here in another state, I can do it from my hometown.
That's right.
So you got to go. You got to fight, man.
Well, we need you. Glad you stayed. Let's go to our stakeholders. Let's hear from Willie Tennyson.
I work at YDC, and I understand the difference between why this white kid listen to this white kid say this and listen to this black kid say this. And it's not a racist statement, it's the truth. I listen to a white kid say, hey man, my daddy owned a store, my daddy owned land, my daddy owned property. Now this is the state of mind of our young black men. Young kid come in and say, man, hey man, my dad a gangster, he did 30 years. My daddy got caught with 2 keys of cocaine. My daddy got 2 bodies. He got a murderer. You can see the tattoos on him. It's all on Facebook. He bragging about that. He thinking that's the way to go. That's the way to be. If you don't go that way, then you soft. You weak. If you're educated and you talk proper and you talk correct, you talking white. You talking soft. I hear a kid brag about another rapper saying, you know, man, oh, he went to school. He graduated from college. He ain't no gangster. As if something was wrong with that. Understanding the thought process of our young people. And look at us right now. We having meetings. We done had marches. We had people sit down and talk with the president. When are we gonna start having black on black marches?
No, it's good.
When that young man, when that police officer stood on that man's neck for 24 hours, they showed his face on TV over and over again. They showed the black brother face who died. They marched for him, they marched for him. But when somebody get killed in our neighborhood, when we gonna start marching against that? When we gonna start standing behind principles and people who talking about the mind frames of our youth? We gotta do more. When we gonna stand up and really stand up behind Zeph Baker when we walk out of here and we talking about a plan, he talking about a plan? You gotta begin your own plan and come back with him again, make phone calls and say, let's bring this to life. Let's put some fire up under this. It can't just be about this. It can't just be about sitting and having a discussion. We've been doing that for 100 years. I'm on point. I ain't the smartest person in the world. I'm on point, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes. It sounds good coming out of my mouth, but we need 1 million people say, I want action, I want action, I want action.
Well,
somebody got killed the other day. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Come to my school. Okay.
I love to.
So because one thing about me, I got an open door policy. I ain't got nothing to hide. And so, but that's why I say I can't blame the youth, because it's the mamas coming by playing that music. It's the dad that's coming and they're sitting in the back seat. So It's called, that TV right there is called programming.
Exactly.
And so our kids are getting programmed. We're the only culture that does this in terms of the music, talking about killing ourselves. They ain't doing it in country music.
Nothing.
So they're not dealing with opera. We're the only cats with jazz, nothing. So my thing is, at least how I raise my child is, ain't no music in the house. Okay,
that's right.
It ain't no music in the Griffin house. You can't listen to it.
And they're giving out awards for it.
Yeah,
they're giving out awards for it.
So while we know, and I believe we all agree that Black lives do matter.
It does.
All right. A popular question from antagonists is, do Black lives matter? Or, is why are Black people killing Black people if Black lives matter?
Right. I think
So do Black lives matter to Black people?
I think it's more of a cliche. I think Dr. Griffith said it really best, that most of people, when I speak of Columbus, have never been outside of Columbus. It's not super spiritual, it's real. When I left Columbus 10 months ago, I begged God. I never prayed so hard in my life, because we came here by way of military and I got stuck. But when I left, every time I come back, when I get to exit 25, I feel that weightiness. It's a weight. You have to leave to know what I'm talking about. It's a weightiness that you feel, because this is a very controlled town. They don't have options and a lot of things to offer our youth anyway, but jail and rap music. They're finding their own heroes. And so when you have a community that's not progressive, that is not cutting edge, you don't have anything that offers anything better to them, they are making their own way. And so YDC, you get your stripes, you're somebody because you've been to jail. Going to jail makes you popular now, especially if you 3rd and 4th generation convict, it makes you more popular. And so when we look at intervention and prevention in this town, we're gonna have to build more than a Starbucks. We're gonna have to do something for our community to feed into the mind something positive to these young people, because what we garbage in, garbage out. They're putting out what they see. All we have to offer them is sit at home. This is a social media town. You have more drama on social media here because there's nothing else to do.
Well, when we say that, because you don't have antagonists to the Black Lives Matter movement just in Columbus. It's
I came in March.
It's throughout America. When I read those statistics, blacks, the number of blacks that are being murdered was 2,000 more than the number of whites being murdered. So when you start to see a pattern in different places that are isolated from each other, then it becomes something that is going on with a system that is perpetuating that pattern. So is there a system that we are facing that we cannot see that is causing us to have certain behaviors and lack certain values that are needed?
Well, you've already said I was a neuroscientist here, and we got two biologists already here, so y'all know there's some systems involved. There's two bombs I got over here. One was by Amos Wilson called Black on Black Violence. The other one's called Slavery by Another Name. Now the issue is the subtitles. The subtitle, the first one is The Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in Service of White Domination. They're doing things to be sure that they don't rise to the occasion. So the system is constructed like that. The subtitle to the Slavery by Another Name is The Reenactment of Black Americans, the Re-enslavement of Black Americans from the Civil War to World War II. Re-enslavement. So what's going on about the prison? Oh, prison is just jail. Jail is just prison. It's like slavery. So it's a system constructed. And again, when you talk about the media, you talk about the images and what people have, what they're seeing, you're right, you need to control that. How are you going to tell your child to read if you're not reading?
Amen.
So if you don't do that in the home, we can't expect them to go to the school to get what they need. So that's why I'm saying the issue with the system constructed, church, community, our environment, if we don't control that, that's why I'm saying it's not integration versus segregation, it's liberation versus control. So if you don't control your own community, there's no way you can get out of the system.
And that's a required, the new Jim Crow is a requirement. You have to read that at my school. And so that's a requirement because we have a culturally relevant pedagogy. Everybody look like me, right? The majority of kids are like me, so we're going to cater to books that represents us in the best ways. Okay, one of our books is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. Yes, that's a mandatory book to read at Harvard and Yale. We're doing that at an alternative school. And so we're trying to change the narrative because we can't change the narrative if we see ourselves as a gangster. I got in trouble here at 17 years old. Somebody called me the N-word. I knocked him out at Columbus, at Macon Road. McDonald's. I went to jail. Now, I'm a great athlete. I'm a gigantic cornerback. I can run. I got more play because I knocked the guy out. And I'm, this is back in the day. Now you had to sit by the phone. Y'all remember that. Wasn't no cell phone, so you had to sit with the long cords and all that. Man, that phone kept ringing. And and I talked to my dad. He said, "Reg, ain't no but mitzvahs." He said, you've elevated. Forget about the stuff you're doing positive. That's what the youth value. And so we've got to change those dynamics. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yes.
You can hear me? I want to say something.
Let's go back to our stakeholders. Jerome.
How you doing? The brother was talking about systems earlier. A long time ago, I told a couple of people, the best coaches are previous players. They've made it to where if you got a certain background, you can't become a teacher. You can't become a police officer. You can't become a counselor in certain platforms. But if you have people who've been through it, having to deal with a systemic measure that keeps you out of the loop, in which you get the very thing that can help somebody, peer-to-peer. So when I was 16, I went to prison for armed robbery. I did 10 years, convicted in Muskogee County. And everywhere I went, I volunteered my services. And we talk about our children seeing the gun violence and seeing the drugs. I came up in that era of Baker Village and Elizabeth County apartments in Columbus. I seen that. I used to have a crack in my drawers on the playground so the police wouldn't catch my dad. You get what I'm saying? So when these children who experience these same type things now, we're asking people who've never experienced that other than reading a book to deal with them and teach them, right? We will never achieve the goal of having a common ground if we keep the people out of the loop who've experienced the experiences.
Some of those things are changing now.
And they are changing, but back to what he kept reiterating, until we stop sending our children to the people who are oppressing us and expecting them to lead us. Every time you turn around, it's a different model coming out. It's a different something coming out. But you never hear them supporting people like myself or Brother Zelf, been in the community doing a lot of stuff. They don't get behind the people who are really going to make a change and challenge the elephants in the rooms. So
the weight of that incarceration will never change. I'm an ex-offender, went back into the prison system to work, still viewed as a convict every time I walk in the door.
Right.
The weight of that conviction will never change. Right. But I'm the most effective because of what I've been through. Right. I get them. I understand their mindset. I know what they're thinking before they think it.
Right.
Because of my background, I became an asset. But you'll never get the respect of the oppressor because you have that GDC number behind your name, and it never goes away.
And that's what I think we got to start doing. We don't need to care about their respect. We need to stop caring about their respect, their
I don't
money.
care about the love,
I understand what you're saying. And I'm saying in the sense of this. When we begin to establish our own identity, matter of fact, get back in touch with our identity that has already been established through our ancestors that was previously here before us. And I want to get to the gun violence thing, what was said earlier. We don't have resources to bring in assault rifles in our community. So when they say we got to do something about gun violence, it's like, for one, if you see a military-grade rifle in your community, why are we pointing at parents instead of looking at Fort Benning or wherever? We don't have access to get this type of stuff. So when I see 13 and 14-year-olds with assault rifles, I'm like, wait a minute, where did you get that? We don't have the means of bringing that over here or bringing it into our community. So it's something going on deeper than what we're saying, right? This is why this stuff is getting out of our community. The lady said, I think she said, a history, the cause and effect. I think it's backwards. We need to look at the cause of it, the effect of it, because the effect of it is why we got a history of a lot of stuff. Because of the cause and effect. And the cause is greed. They don't want the prison system to deplete. They want to keep it in there because the prison industrial complex, Columbus alone, make millions of dollars a year off of inmate labor. So are they really coming out with models that want to keep our kids safer? Oh, well, I don't want them in my neighborhood, so if they kill themselves, I'm okay with that. Oh, when we go on the news, though, we got to look concerned. We got to look concerned on the news, but in the streets, you don't see our council members out in the streets advocating. They scared to come in our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They don't want to do nothing on the educational end because they're scared. They know if you educate the black boy, he'll become just as powerful as you are.
And that's the point.
Jerome Lawson, let me just say this, because you bring up a good point. What is the role of our leadership when it comes to the gun violence that we've experienced, not just across America, but I mean, it is very high here in Columbus, Georgia. Where are our leaders, and what is the role of our leaders?
I don't know. I can't name any, and I'm not trying to put nobody down or be slick, but I see people when it's time to get reelected, and so that's the power in Columbus when it's time to get elected, and I think too is the Democrats and the Republicans is two wings of the same bird. So right now the Democrats are going to start coming down. We're going to be tough on crime because that's always going to be that narrative that the Democrats aren't. And who's going to be affected with that? It's going to be us. And so I think we need to come up with different ways. Like, everybody wants to go to the gang problem. If you got a 14-year-old kid who's 5'3", and he could tell a 6'2" tall man, a kid 17 what to do. This kid's 14. If you tell him to go over here, I need him on my team. Okay, I need him on my team, but for him to be on my team, I got to give him some leadership skills for society. Because see, one thing I learned a long time ago, that puppy, if he's not going to bite, you can send him to all the clamp down things you want to.
Right.
Okay. Right. If that administrator doesn't have leadership skills, you can send them to all the theoretical leadership places on the planet. They're not going to lead. So what we do is, with our kids, we do co-intel pro at the local level. We cut the leadership off. We don't train those kids who are the true leaders in our community. We try to send them to jail. And then guess what? The weakest kids in the community, the weakest kids at your school assume the leadership role. In no way they would have ever had that leadership role, and that's why it's haywire in these communities. And so, because it's grown-ups our age that are in gangs of disciples. They always been in it. You know, and so you have sons and you have daughters who are in these gangs too. We have to stop oppressing these kids, start looking at these gangs as small Kappas, start looking at these gangs as small AKAs, right. Start looking at these gangs as small Q. I'm a nuke now, so I'm gonna have to go with that. But my point is that yes. Why wouldn't the kid? Have you gone to some of our communities?
Right.
Have you seen what them kids got to walk through? You got to be in the gang in some of our communities.
Right. Right.
But how can we again? For a better word, how can we make that kid better? They got all the leadership skills. Yeah. We losing on that.
Yeah, well, I know Dr. Moore, and we're gonna, I want you to, let's park right there. But Dr. Moore, I'm gonna ask Dr. Lillian a question, but I want you to help me come back to, you mentioned changing the narrative. And what Dr. Griffin is talking about is, let's stop looking at them as gangster disciples. Let's stop looking at them as Crips and Bloods. You know, but Dr. Lillian, what is the church's role?
Well, that's a good question. I think the church can do an awful lot, and I was really impressed with the young man back there who says that he's willing and we need other people involved. I think the church has a key role in getting out in the community. People come to church, and they come and they warm the benches and they warm the chairs. And they think that's what their role is. But the church is a place for those that are hurting, those that are sick. They're the ones that need to be coming in there. The members of the church need to be out, taking care of these children that are hurting, the families that are hurting, and trying to bring them in and do more. The church members need to be out trying to get those people and helping them with the issues. The children that are hurting, as he was talking about, those that are grieving. And when you were asking about the leaders, I was always taught the leader gets out there and gets in front. I don't see that. I haven't seen any of that in Columbus. You know, we have people running for office and they're saying they're going to do this and do that and do the other. Well, they show up for a meeting, I guess they get a check and that's it. But I don't see them out in the community until it's time for re-election. I don't know what they're doing about those issues.
In saying that, let's continue there. A lot of people, when they look at the crime and murders and the violence that's happening in the city, they question, what does that have to do with a state representative, or what does that have to do with the council person, or what does that have to do with the mayor? They don't handle violence. There's a certain type of thinking with the people that's not the leader's role. They don't have anything to do with the problems that are actually impacting the community.
It's a problem if you live in that community. You're a part of that community. I live in the community, it's my problem too. We all live in the community.
So we've said a whole lot. And you asked about, I'm not from Columbus, but you asked about the politicians, what are they doing? Well, basically, I don't think politicians can be leaders, because you said they come around when they need a vote, but what are you really doing? Because if they could now go investigate, how did that Fort Benning contract work out to get to that school where now all those guns got stolen? How did that, if they're not gonna ask that question, then you're useless. So the leaders need to be coming from the community, even with the church. They used to have something called the dope busters from the Nation of Islam. Back in the 90s. You know what the dope busters were?
Explain.
So Brother Griffin already dropped the kernel about the COINTELPRO. He didn't tell what the people the COINTELPRO means, but that's counterintelligence program, the government's counterintelligence program. So we need to have our own. There's a movie called Drop Squad, DROP, Deprogramming for the Restoration of Pride. That means What are they doing in the community? I'm not talking about, because I don't know them personally, but the churches need to have education for liberation programs. If you own that property, if there ain't nobody else coming there but you and your people, why isn't it coming from there? There are some schools, I guess, that are coming from churches, that they have their own independent schools, but there need to be a lot more. So we start dealing with us and this dynamic of who is the leader. It starts where at home. That's what I'm saying. If you don't turn that TV off, you don't turn that radio off, guess what? You be programmed. That's why it's telling you a vision. The whole radio, we don't control some of those songs. The people who are giving these kids these contracts, they just keep saying that nigga stuff. They keep saying that butt stuff. That guy named Drake that people like, that guy named Drake that people like, you know he's half Jewish? Talking nigga this, nigga, he's half Jewish? Come on.
It's for the money.
Capitalism, that's what it's all about. So we got business folks in the community. Guess what? How do we support those businesses? So if we don't have leaders that are talking about in the community what you need to do, the politicians ain't gonna help you.
Now you mentioned, and I know we're getting ready to have to take a break, but I have to get this in. You mentioned programming, okay? I see a lot of people going around with pop-up programs. Churches have always had programs. You've always had CBOs, community-based organizations, that have had programs. Is there a difference? And if there is, what is the difference between a program and an effective program that impacts the community in which it serves?
Most of these programs aren't evidence-based or anything. It hasn't worked anywhere else. And we just trying to entertain the people, to keep them busy, keep them looking. What works for Karen may not work for Mika. And so we have to get programs that our people who are called by our name will work. Every program does not work in every community. You got to know what the principalities that's over Columbus, Georgia.
We're going to pick up with the programs, but we're going to have to take a break, and we're going to come right back with programs.
We're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to find out what our experts and stakeholders have to say about finding a solution to this problem.
We are the only people on the planet, look at the globe, the only people on the planet that send our kids to our former oppressors to teach them.
Amen.
That's all I got to say.
Hi, I am Dr. Wayne Baker, the host of Breaking the Code, the show where we discuss the question that everybody wants answered, but nobody wants to ask. Join us weekly for Breaking the Code.
Hi, I'm Joanne Hill, and I invite you to visit the Game Changer Foundation. The Game Changer Foundation desires to make the world a better place by empowering women who struggle to find their purpose and to make the positive impact they desire. During these difficult times, we must work together. If you are looking for a mentor, or perhaps you desire to be a mentor, sign up today at the Game Changer Foundation. The world is waiting for you. You are a game changer.
The killing has to stop now. If you're waiting for the cavalry, it's not coming. We must join forces and address the factors contributing to the frustrations of our children, brothers, fathers, and partners. I'm talking about jobs, housing, healthcare, education, and yes, discrimination. We can stop the madness that's causing this sadness if we work together. There is nothing cool about killing.
Welcome back to The American Way, the systemic use of violence and guns to secure the American dream and the disproportionate cost to Black people. Back to you, Zeph.
Thank you, Joanne. We want to begin where we left off. We were talking about programs, and everybody is doing a program now. There's so many programs from CBOs, community-based organizations, churches, a lot of pop-up programs. When we talk about, is there a difference between programs and just programs to entertain? Is there a difference?
Well, I like to just start off historically, because we know of a person named Carter G. Woodson who started something called Black History Week, Why'd he start it? Because he wanted a program for you to know your history. That program moved to a month, Black History Month. But we already know that a week and a month is not what we need to be understanding history. We need what every day. That means you need a program to have your mind straight to understand who you are. That's the reason why people and these kids are killing one another, because they don't respect themselves. If you don't see them respecting one another from what they see in the media, then how can you respect? That's why it's easy to kill somebody and respect. You stepped on my shoe. Now you want to kill somebody because they stepped on your shoe. Again, we're coming out of this pandemic. Now we're coming out of a situation where we've been programmed to be by ourselves. Now we don't know how to relate to one another when we get out to the real world. Programmed. So again, history. So Carter G. Woodson did that early on. So I'm saying that I'm not saying I'm any better than anybody else just because I have some knowledge, I have some information, I have some books. I like to tell people I'm a garbage man. They don't even know what I do. So in that context, it's about what you have in your head, in your brain, and the knowledge you have to make it work for you. So that's a program.
Well, what does an effective program look like? And have we really seen an effective program in the Black community that addresses the issues and has had positive impact to bring about the desired results?
Yeah.
What does an effective program look like?
So I don't want to hold the mic, but I have two examples. One is, I mentioned earlier about the dope busters by the Nation of Islam. Those were brothers without guns going into the communities, cutting down the brothers that are doing the dope dealing. They didn't have no government support to do that. They organized themselves, just like they're selling the bean pies, just like they're selling the final call. They went and organized themselves to go into the communities to what? Squash the drugs. Do we hear about that? Do we know about that? Probably not, because I don't want you hearing things about us doing positive things in our community. For me, I started out as a Black kid going to school, wanting to be a white kid. Why? Because that's how this educational system is structured. It's structured to make you either white or hate yourself, not to be appreciative of your background and your history. So as I wanted to then go on to Temple or Penn State, like all the other white kids, didn't quite work out that way. My white principal said, hey, why don't you check out this school called Lincoln University? Never really thought about it. Programmed to think like white people. So as I went to Lincoln University, struggled a little bit, and just give you a little bit of my history about this issue of violence. I almost had a violent encounter my first freshman year where I would not be here right now. I had a situation where, hey, you know what? It's a matter of making the right decision, and I'm glad the decision was made properly. So fast forward to Howard University and in graduate school, walking, and I think you all remember the Stop the Violence programs back in the 90s when all the killings were going on back then. Sounds like generational things, huh? Back then, and so the same things are happening now. So I remember standing on a corner and these two white cops, undercover so-called, came up to me and started, there he is, and frisking me and patting me down. I'm like, all I'm thinking is they could have put some drugs in my pocket. They could have did something to me, provoked me, and now I could have been in jail. Here I am, a graduate student seeking my doctoral degree, Brother Griffin. I could have not been here today. So I'm saying that we're sometimes programmed to not want to excel and do things that are righteous. And so when we're seeing one another disrespected on TV, it's easier than disrespect the brother in real life and just kill him. Programmed.
Have we seen effective programs? We talk about history. We're talking about making an impact. We're talking about slavery. Have we seen? We're talking. What effective programs have there been in the Black community? And if we've seen them, why are they not still around today?
I think our issues are so, eclectic. It's not just one or two things. So sometimes people fall into those niches. And I have a good friend, she's been running a program for years called Second Chance for offenders coming out, finding jobs, because that's, when you deal with, like at my master, we get brothers come from all over the planet, and many have had that fence on them. And so, and some have skills, some don't. So I have seen elements work. It's just, what are you talking about? But I think, like Second Chance is not designed for like a money grab. It's really designed to go out there and find and help folks rehabilitate and get back in society and earn some money, and so I have seen elements of things work, but it's no box program. I don't think that, can be invented just to help, everything that we do. I think you need elements of to attack everything. I mean, we haven't fixed education.
Right.
So how do you fix education versus, the prison industrial complex? So we have a lot of elements, a lot of things that we have to work on, either in tandems or just in silos, so we can fix one and keep moving.
I did have something to add that I missed.
Go ahead.
It's very important about the program. I taught at Morehouse College for 6 years. My first job after getting my doctoral degree, Brother Griffin. So I got paid to teach revolution. I got paid to teach brothers what they need to do the right thing in an academic environment. And some of those brothers then came back and got their PhD, and then now they're serving as professors. A program. One of the more popular people who went to Morehouse College, that was Martin Luther King. If you can't say, he came from a productive program. So it's now a matter of having schools and systems where we're teaching our own, and those are programs that shown that can be done.
Absolutely.
And schools, please excuse my ignorance, the Black Panthers had programs. Okay. Some of the people, the Gangster Disciples have programs.
The programs that they had, why were they cut short? Was there an infiltration? Was there a system that was designed to stop the programs because of the success? What happened to the effective programs that positively impacted, especially our youth? Because that's what we want to change the trajectory. We do that by effectively having programs that impact our youth. What happened with those programs? Anybody care to share?
They were replaced with the negativity of rap music. Whereas rap music started out positive, it went in a negative direction, and our youth were enamored with the negative.
Many would ask, why is everything that starts off positive for blacks, why does it end up negative? And is there, and a lot of, and because I'm talking about conversations that are going on in people's living rooms, in the barbershops, by the water cooler, before work, during work, after work. Why is it that everything that is positive turns to a negative when it comes to blacks? And so people would like to blame those who are the victims versus looking at the perpetrators.
I think it deals with our family dynamics, social, economical dynamics. A lot of things turn things to negative, whereas you had two-parent homes. I came from a two-parent home where the responsibility of raising and was predominantly my mother and the provision was my father. Now you have mothers having to hold down black sons and daughters by themselves. So things that did start out as positive, the negativity is coming from the home. The negativity is coming from the school.
But see, a lot of people would say when you start talking about the negativity coming from the home, then there's another school of thought that says you can't blame the victim because the home is a victim of a larger dynamic of programming. Simply because, just take music. We know, and there have been a lot of documentaries that have been put out that, rap music started out positive, talking about positive things. But there was a meeting where those who were the best at the art of rap were brought in by the executives and the owners and distributors of the music industry, and they were told, hey, we want to start to promote something different. And if you choose not to promote the gangster rap, then we're not going to play your music and you're not going to get a record deal. So that is a design in the programming of a whole generation of people through music.
And it's an absolute
leadership. So do you blame the listener, who's the victim of the programming of the music, or do you blame the one who is in control and has ownership of the music, who has set up the system to do the programming? How do we look at this?
I think it's an absence of leadership, and it's perpetrated. Like every time you go see, and no offense, they have generally, when you have events to deal with us, you have musicians, you have some pastors that may not even serve that community. You have you have people that are so far removed, and we put those people up in front. Now, what could these rappers tell me about living every day? We're not in the same communities. We don't do the same things. And so and that's one of the oldest tricks in the book, athletes. So, this guy get his head buzzed, at some point in time, he's not a scholar in XYZ, but we hold these people up. And so but that's an absence of leadership in the community when you got to go to some rapper or some kid who just got a contract, gonna be in the NFL for 3 years. And so now he's an expert. So I think we got to look at those kind of issues too. And then too, I think with programming, some people really don't know how to start programs. Right. Some people don't know how to build teams. Some people don't know, how can you deal with problems in the community and you don't have an African-American principal, a black psychologist, you know what I'm saying? When you don't have anybody who understands business. Right. So it's gotta be, you've got to step by step because our parents don't know this. We're just removed from apartheid. I'm born in 1972. I'm the first African American in my home that somewhat was out of apartheid. Right. You see what I'm saying? So we can't expect things to go overnight, but we also can't be in a condition that everything is acceptable. That's ridiculous.
Good point. Let's go to our stakeholders. Ms. Sonia Pace, you have an interesting story and an experience that we see, but not all have experienced. What are your thoughts?
I do think that it starts at home. A lot of this stuff starts at home. Fortunately, even though I didn't come into, grew up in a home where we had principles, we had policies, we had procedures and stuff like that, but it's different in my home that I raised my kids in. Let me say that. I do think that what we're allowing our children to see and hear is is one of the major drives to what they're projecting in the streets. And a big thing, a concern that I have as a parent, my son was killed by a gun being stolen from a home. But now it's like guns are being placed in a bucket in the street, and it's there for the picking. So I don't know how we can actually, do anything about that, because that is the major issue for me. We can talk about teaching them how to use a gun properly, how to handle a gun, because sometimes it is for hunting, it is for different activity, recreation and stuff like that. But we have children that are really raising themselves, and for them it's a fun factor. They don't know the severity of what it is actually doing to the black community. Let me say that, because we're losing them by the droves. It is not a one person here yearly. It's by the droves. And I mean, really, you taking a whole neighborhood or a whole section of a city and wiping it out.
And you're absolutely right. So are we seeing the domino effect? And is the momentum so far and so great that it's almost unstoppable? Because that's how a lot of people feel. I see you shaking your head. Please, Dr. Moore, speak on it.
Look, the colonizer is guilty for what we are not. We are responsible for what we ought to be. That's why we can get out of this.
Say that again.
The colonizer, the white man, anybody you know is oppressing you, is guilty for what you are not. We are responsible for what we ought to be. So if I'm telling you, not just in a book, I'm telling you just through a life experience, you have the opportunity to make that change. They've made us so we can't read. They made you dumb so you can't break down the code. They made it so you can't analyze stuff. You start analyzing, you start breaking down, guess what? You start changing the system up. So now you got, again, Republicans that are all over the nation changing the voting laws. It's a democracy. You should have everybody wanting to vote. Nah. When they start losing the game, you start changing the rules. So I'm saying that we gotta be in a position to say, oh, we can win this, but you can't win if you ain't understanding the dynamics of what's in your community causing the kids to kill one another. Where did that gun come from? Why did the parent not be around so that that child would not be in that position? I raised 2 boys. Both of them got college educations. Independent on their own. I raised a daughter. Independent on her own. It starts where? In the home.
In the home.
So I'm just saying we can win. That's what I'm saying. I don't vibe on the negativity part of it. We can tell these kids and change it around if we are there in the community.
Well, see, that's what a lot of people are looking to hear, because we hear so much negativity. And as our panelists and stakeholders have spoken, you have to talk about the negativity because you talk about the history, because we, as Jerome Lawson pointed out, we talk about the cause. And when you talk about the cause, you have to go back in history. But what you're saying is we cannot be stuck there.
Oh. Right.
And so how do we talk about the cause, and which makes us go back into history and not get stuck there? And let's hold it.
I think one of our bigger issues is identity problem. Like if we we was slaves, then we was Negroes, then we was blacks, then we were African Americans, and so we still going on with our identity crisis. We don't know who we are as a people for real no more. So we being everything that we are told that we should be. And even some of us are guilty of cultivating this mind state and this mentality into our future. We got to take accountability. You know, if in order for me to understand why these young men doing certain things, if somebody come to me and ask me, can you talk to my son? The only way I'm gonna understand your son is if you come clean about the part that you played, the accountability part of what you played on raising your son. Be honest. That's the only way we're gonna get past all this. We got to be honest with each other. And a lot of times we want instant gratification of our efforts, you know, our walks and things like that. But we have to give ourselves a time frame to be realistic about the true solutions. You know what I'm saying? We got to be patient with it too. And we still gonna deal with a lot of things that we dealing with, but we got to understand the long-term goal is to decrease the numbers, the tragedies, the use of gun violence. We got to find common ground. Right. Whether you're a Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, whatever your religion is or whatever you believe in, common ground is what's going to get us where we need to be.
Well, Sean, you bring an interesting point up, but I'd like to say that a lot of people, a lot of blacks, we talk unity, we talk working together, we talk coming together, and we talk common ground. But yet, when it's time to do it, we find the difference. Well, this person didn't support me when I was trying to do it. Well, this person, he thinks he's all that. She thinks she's above everybody. We start to look at the differences that put us right back in the same mold that we say we're coming together to get out of. So what is the solution?
Well, you know, Mr. Riley has a program. And I think one problem in Columbus, it's not a citywide database on what people are doing, okay? So I'm gonna go back because when you start asking about programs and stuff like that, well, you know, Coach Flowers, This Works has a program, and he's changed schools and stuff like that, supported schools. So there are programs. I think the issue is we don't have a database on what sororities and this group and that group are doing. I think that might need to be one of the first calls. So if he's dealing with youth, it should have a youth section on his program. And I think that may help some of the issues that we have too, because really, what's the database to go on? If you need to call somebody about your child, it's not in no, many times they're not in a book that you can go find these things.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's pivot, because there's another aspect to all of this that I believe we need to talk about before we finish this conversation, which I don't think it ever will be finished even in this hour. We're going to have to do more of these talks. But let's go to the business community, because a lot of what we experience is poverty and economics. And if we don't address the poverty and economics, then you know, we're just spinning our wheels. So Yaron Wright happens to be, and I'd just like to give a little background on this brother. He is a licensed general contractor. And as far as I know, he's the only licensed general contractor in this black licensed general contractor in this city. So Yaron, would you care to speak to us on business and economics?
I wasn't brought up, knowing about what I would do as a career. My mom, my dad, they were taught to go to college or they had to go work in the mill. The background that I'm looking at as far as being a contractor, and a lot of kids that are out here, they really don't know that there are other avenues to be successful, and that, we as entrepreneurs, as people that's in the community, we have a charge. We have to reach out and extend a hand to the kids to let them know that we're here.
Well, in reaching out as an employer, do you have challenges on hiring from the community? Are there challenges in hiring?
I think it's definitely challenges in hiring because of, working and a lot of kids don't look at, working as, a lot of kids want to make it the easy way, when it's a hard road. And that comes from, the background and how we grew up. I grew up, by my grandparents, and they taught me, hey, we had to get out in the garden. We had to cut grass, we had to work. And, that starts at home, building the character.
Yes. You mentioned something else in reference to degrees and going to college. And we've talked about that from our stakeholders all the way to the panelists. But a lot of people will say we have more people with degrees in our community. But that doesn't mean that we are more impactful. So there's a difference between education and intelligence. And many people say that just because you're educated does not mean that you are intelligent. It just means you have not just more people with degrees, you have more people who are programmed. So it goes back to the programming. And what is an effective programming when it comes to the issues that face the community?
The reason why we're having problems with this is because everything's been turned backwards. Because basically,
Explain.
Okay. Brother Amos Wilson, in his book called Issues of Manhood in Black and White, why aren't there more whites in jail? Well, they must be less criminal, isn't that right? Well, it's about what I've told you about work. Strategies for what? Conflict resolution. Strategies for what? Training in life social skills. Are we doing that today? Is that happening in the churches? Strategies for firearm safety. We already talked about that. Strategies for recreational activities. All these new developments going up. All these homes and no place to play. No place to have activities for kids to do something constructive. So when we talk about programs, people have done the work already about what we need. We just aren't reading the books to do it.
Right. But we have to get this information out. Dr. Griffin.
There has been an explosion in entrepreneurship in the black community. So I think sometimes Reagan made us do some things we weren't comfortable with, and COVID did as well. And so I see countless students, former students, especially females, they're on the grind. They're doing some very unique things in the community. Some stuff that Columbus has never seen, some stuff probably nobody has ever seen. So I think we do have elements of that. I think it's who you're around, and what you're exposed to, because we have our problems, but we have a ton of success stories too.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And so, I mean, we all got up this morning, that's one success.
Absolutely.
But everybody in the panel knows somebody has been successful and doing great things. And so I think, you know, I just want to end, I guess, on a good note, because these are the kind of things that I'm also seeing too.
Absolutely.
And I do see the deaths. You know, when I hear a human being has been killed, the first thing I do is type in my computer to see if they came through the alternative school. And the overwhelming majority of the kids that have been murdered in our city have come through my alternative school. Either it was before me or now. And so these kids are going back to their home schools, but then they're dropping out at the home schools. They're not dropping out over there with me. So we have our problems, but at the same time, I get more people call me to use the facility than to help the people in the facility. So when people call, I be like, heck no, I'm full on all them dates. You know, because we have the most at risk, and we have the least amount of human beings that come support the kids who really need it the most.
Absolutely.
So that, I just wanted to say that.
Good point. And we're going to have to end here. This conversation definitely is not over, but I want to thank the panelists, the stakeholders, and the viewing audience for beginning the conversation. I definitely think it's headed in the right direction. Joanne?
We are out of time, but we would like to thank our expert panelists, our distinguished stakeholders, our moderator, and of course, thank you for watching.